What is up, all you loyal Sports Frenzy 2.0 denizens out there in podcast land? Welcome to the latest episode, Sports Frenzy 2.0. I'm the Maestro, Kevin Crane. I am flying solo this week. The Conquistador family commitments. It's Thanksgiving. What would you expect? But I, devoted as I am to you, will still put out some content. Not only here on November the 23rd, hitting Thanksgiving morning, something for you to listen to before the Bills and the Lions kick off, but you'll also get the weekend edition. I will review Nope, the third film from Jordan Peele, as well as Nickelback's new album, Get Rollin', but that's for later on this week. Right now, we've got to talk about football. Wrap up last week's NFL action before this week's action starts on Turkey Day. So let us get into it, shall we? Of course, the Bears are the primary team that we cover here on Sports Frenzy 2.0. Bears are 3-8, but I've got to say, it's been a long time since I've seen a team, whether it's my team or any other team, with a record of 3-8 that gives you hope, that gives you promise for the future. And you guys know I am Mr. Negativity. I'm always the guy who's saying, this team sucks, this player sucks, this coach sucks, this GM sucks. And I'm still not convinced about Poles as the GM. You've heard me and Dave go back and forth. If Justin Fields turns out to be as good as it looks like he could be, based on how he's played over the last 4 or 5 weeks, then I think Ryan Pace needs to get a lot of credit. That being said, Bears lost again, this time to the Falcons, down in Atlanta, 27-24. And this is the situation that you are going to have to deal with when you've got a quarterback like Justin Fields. Very mobile, a lot of planned runs, a lot of unplanned runs, scrambling out of the pocket. Shoulder injury, looks like a separation, looks like some tendon damage. They have not ruled him out for this weekend's upcoming game with the Jets, who've got their own quarterback issues. We'll get to those in a minute. Again, the Bears are 3-8, but at least offensively, they look like they know what they're doing. But again, don't mean to harp on something Dave and I have talked about week after week after week. You did not have to sell the farm on the defense, especially with Roquan Smith. You could have had balance on both sides of the ball. I honestly think the Bears could have won at least 2 of these games recently, since Justin Fields has really caught fire. If you had had Roquan Smith out there as a leader on the defense, a tackling machine. That's why I'm Mr. Negativity. That's why I will take the positives that we've seen from this offense. The emergence finally of Cole Kmet, the better play of Darnell Mooney. And I'll turn it into a negative because the defense is so awful right now. They are one of the worst defenses in football since they traded Roquan Smith. It's an idiotic formula for failure. And I will go back to what I always say, the Bears, just like the Cubs, cheap, 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 cheap. They don't care about putting a quality product on the field. They care about making money. So it's looking like the Bears could have a top 10 draft pick next year. What are they going to do with it? Are they going to finally try to rebuild the defense? Are they going to try to get yet another weapon for Justin Fields? Now, after the trade for Chase Claypool, I would say you've got to go defense or offensive line. The good thing for the Bears is they are not in the market for a quarterback, so depending on how the rest of this season goes, the higher the draft pick, the more leverage they have where they could work a deal to move back, accumulate more picks. Yeah, believe it or not, Bears fans, you can do that. I know we're used to it going the other way, where we give away picks to move up. But since we don't need CJ Stroud or we don't need Bryce Young, we can move back if we end up with a third or fourth or fifth pick. If it's advantageous to another team to try to move up to get a quarterback. We'll see if the Bears front office is actually smart enough to figure that out in the offseason and pull off, for once, a smart first-round deal. The other teams that we follow, the Dolphins for Dave, the Buccaneers for me, both on buys this week. Dolphins are 7-3, heading into an easy showdown. Sorry, Texans fans. An easy showdown with the Houston Texans. The Texans just today, as we tape on the 23rd, announced they are done with Davis Mills. They're moving on to Kyle Allen. So basically that tells me that they are expecting to be one of those top draft teams next year, and they will get CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. Davis Mills probably headed for career backup mode in the NFL for the next 6 or 7 years. Not a bad living if you can get it. Just saying. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 5-5, even with that record, first place in the NFC South. They are playing on a nasty, terrible field in Cleveland. We'll explain more about that when we get to our dumbasses of the week. Bucks and the Browns this coming Sunday. Now, we mentioned the Texans made a quarterback move, but all the news this week has been about the Jets. The New York Jets, after that ugly, awful 10-3 loss up in Foxborough to the Patriots. No offense in that game whatsoever. The lone touchdown coming at the end of the game on a punt return TD. Technically, neither offense scores. 2 field goals and the punt return. Zach Wilson, the number 2 overall pick in last year's draft, 2021, looked awful, looked terrible. And we've seen it before. Nothing new. But the question is, when do you pull the trigger? When do you move on? When do you declare the player a bust? Whether it's Ryan Leaf, whether it's Christian Ponder, whether it's Josh Rosen. Jamarcus Russell. When do you move on? When do you say enough is enough? We'll bite the bullet, we'll eat the money, and we've got to try to win, especially if you're the Jets right now, because you're still in the playoff hunt in the AFC. So Zach Wilson, after his bad performance and his even worse press conference afterwards, acting like a petulant, spoiled brat. I'm not going where Booger McFarland went, though. Little bit too much for Booger on Monday Night Football, basically claiming that Zach Wilson is entitled, never been held accountable because he's a rich kid. That's, I don't know, maybe not stepping over a line, but getting really close. You're towing the line, you're tight roping the line. But Zach Wilson is now done for the time being as the New York Jets quarterback. He will be inactive against the Bears this coming Sunday. Mike White will come in and start. Joe Flacco will be the backup. Mike White played briefly. Was Zach Wilson injured last year? Showed sparks, showed a little bit of energy, a little bit of leadership. So Robert Saleh, the head coach of the Jets, goes with Mike White. And just to tell you how bad, how awful the Jets' offense was in the second half in that 10-3 loss to the Patriots, they averaged 2.7 to 2.88 inches, not yards, inches a play, depending on who you talk to. Some say 2.7, some say 2.88 inches per play in that second half against the Patriots. Speaking of quarterback changes, the Panthers, they've had enough of Baker Mayfield again. This has got to be it for Baker Mayfield. You want to talk about how a few minutes ago I relegated Davis Mills to backup hell? Well, Baker Mayfield's going to be joining him because I can't see how Baker Mayfield's ever going to be a starting quarterback again in this league. He is benched again. And he's being replaced by Sam Darnold, another guy that I cannot see beyond this season starting in the NFL ever again. So basically, we're looking at the Texans and the Panthers are the two primary teams that are going to be fighting it out for Ohio State's quarterback and Alabama's quarterback. Now, will anybody else jump into the fray, try to trade in, try to trade up? The Texans, with their record, are in line for the number one pick. The Panthers, the problem with the Panthers, if they stumble into another win or two, might put themselves out of contention and will have to trade up to get the quarterback that they need to revive that franchise. Now, one team that does not need reviving is the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles just keep adding and trying to bolster this team. Only one loss so far. Impressively came back, beat the Colts. Nick Sirianni, the head coach, was happy. Of course, he was a protege of Frank Reich, who recently was fired as head coach of the Colts. Sirianni looked at this like a revenge game. He got his revenge. Better be careful, though. Better be careful. You won by 1 point. Coming off a loss to the Commanders. The Eagles have got to be careful now. Even though the Vikings looked awful, losing badly to the Cowboys, the Eagles, of course, look to be firmly in charge of that number one slot, the bye week in the NFC playoffs. You better be very careful. The last couple times you've been on the field, the Eagles have not looked all that great. But that being said, they added Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph to bolster the interior of their defensive line because of what happened in that Commanders loss, where the Commanders were able to run, control the clock, 2-1 time of possession advantage. And Jonathan Taylor ran fairly well against them here in this 1-point victory this past weekend over the Colts. So that could be their weakness. And who does that play into? I just mentioned. The Vikings getting destroyed by the Dallas Cowboys 40-3. Dallas might have finally figured out that Tony Pollard is their number one back, not Ezekiel Elliott. Dak Prescott, not as dynamic as he was a few years back in terms of the passing game, but he can still get it done. And now with the double-headed dragon, the two-headed threat in the backfield with Pollard and Elliott, will the Cowboys emerge now as one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NFC? San Francisco might have something to say about that as they destroyed the Arizona Cardinals in Mexico City. I figured this was coming. After the acquisition of Christian McCaffrey, you could tell the 49ers were now poised to start making a move. They might have buried themselves in too much of a hole to get that number 1 seed away from the Eagles, but I could definitely see the 49ers getting to the number 2, number 3 slot, winning the NFC West, and being a legitimate threat to go to the Super Bowl. That team is stacked. Kittle, Ayuk, Debo, and of course, Christian McCaffrey. Now, unfortunately, we talked recently about the travesty involving Britt Reed drinking on the campus of the Kansas City Chiefs, the training facility where they have their headquarters, leaving that facility, getting in an accident, destroying the life of a young girl. And Dave and I have railed on the fact that the penalty was too light, reeking of entitlement. But at least it looks like the NFL has stood up and took notice. Like most businesses, the NFL is reactionary. They'll let things go until something tragic or something awful happens. And the Britt Reed situation has obviously given the NFL and Roger Goodell a focal point where they have said enough with the drinking in team facilities, on team buses, on team planes. Now, Titans offensive coordinator Todd Downing didn't get the memo. And if he did, he ignored it, because after their big win over the Packers, Thursday Night Football, 27-17, got back home, speeding, pulled over, arrested for DUI. And then we have the Commanders, who are not known for being paragons of virtue. But Tyler Heineke, the quarterback, pictures leak of him on the team plane as they come back off a big victory, drinking a Busch Light. Even that doesn't fly anymore, no pun intended, with the NFL. Supposedly, discipline has been handed down. The NFL does not want a repeat of what happened with Britt Reed, and good for them. Kudos to them. But again, reactionary. Who's going to give that young girl her life back, her fully functional life back, because of the idiocy and the stupidity of the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid? And I will never, ever give Andy Reid the respect that people think he deserves ever again, because of what he allowed to happen in that situation. Andy Reid can take a cheeseburger and shove it up his ass, as far as I am concerned. He's not lovable. I can't believe State Farm still has him in commercials. After him coddling and letting his son, with the problems he's had in the past, drink at the Chiefs HQ and go out afterwards driving and putting that girl's life in danger and destroying it. The hell with Andy Reid. Now, of course, we've got the Players Association upset, because after the Deshaun Watson idiotic contract that Deshaun Watson got from the Cleveland Browns after they traded for him, fully guaranteed, for another NFL player with discipline issues. And in this case, very severe, very grave issues. The NFLPA now is upset because the next contracts that came out after that, for Aaron Rodgers, for Russell Wilson, for Kyler Murray, they weren't fully guaranteed. So the NFLPA is now investigating, looking to file possibly a grievance, because now they want all the quarterback contracts guaranteed. Basically, they want what the NBA and Major League Baseball have, the fully guaranteed contracts. You will destroy the sport. Look at how the popularity of Major League Baseball has plummeted. And whether ESPN and TNT want to admit it or not, nobody likes the NBA that much either. Outside of China, of course. That's the only reason the NBA will survive, is because of the interests in China and the sneaker companies. Guaranteed fully guaranteed contracts for any player. You start with the quarterbacks, and it's going to obviously bleed down into every other position. It will destroy the sport because a team will make one bad signing or a player will not try once he gets a fully guaranteed $250 million contract. What's his incentive to keep playing hard, to keep trying to play hard? Because if he fails, he's still going to get that $250 million. There's no incentive for him to get better. There's no incentive for him to continue to try to win, at least if it's only partially guaranteed. There's some reason for the player to try to get better, to try to win, to try to work to make the organization, the franchise, the team better. I wish they'd get rid of guaranteed contracts in the other two sports before they do it in the NFL. I want them to go the other way, but I know it won't happen. I'm not naive. There will be fully guaranteed contracts at some point in the future in the NFL, and it will start to degrade the sport. All right, other games from last week we didn't get to talk about. The Rams are an absolute mess right now. They sold their souls for one Super Bowl. The Rams now sit at 3-7. Matthew Stafford dealing with concussion issues. Cooper Kupp looking like he's out for the year. They went down to the Saints 27-20. The Bengals and the Steelers in that rivalry. A lot more points scored than you would expect. 37-30, though, the Bengals win. I have a lot of faith in the Bengals. Kind of flip. Normally, the runner-up in the Super Bowl is the team that fails to get into the Super Bowl or even into contention the following year. Usually, they barely make it to the playoffs, if that. But the defending champs usually show up. Now, I just mentioned the Rams aren't going to make the playoffs this year. But it looks like the Bengals are starting, even without Jamar Chase, who's going to be out another week or two, starting to get their feet under them. They might not catch the Ravens in the AFC North, but they will get in as a wild card. And in a great Sunday night game, the Chiefs come from behind to beat the Chargers at SoFi 30-27. It would be very hard to not say the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL right now. And I know I just ripped Andy Reid apart. It's got nothing to do with football. My disdain, my hatred for Andy Reid is off the field. On the field, I can separate. On the field, great head coach who has got everything he needs with that Chiefs team right now. Best thing that could possibly have happened for them. Might be time to move on from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Isaiah Pacheco, the late round pick from Rutgers, tons of speed. Looks like he might be the better option in the backfield. Travis Kelce, Hall of Famer, still tearing it up at tight end. And they just plug the receivers in and out. You get injuries to Juju Smith-Schuster. You get injuries to the newly acquired Kadarius Toney. It doesn't matter. The Chiefs just keep rolling along. All right, segment 1 is done. We'll start off segment 2 with our NFL Week 12 picks. Quick promo coming, and then I will be right back, kids.
This episode of Sports Frenzy 2.0 is brought to you by the Bills Mafia Marital Aid Company, because when you are down and out, we'll bring you back up and in the game. Sports Frenzy 2.0 on Spotify, Anchor, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, and Stitcher.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Segment 2 here. Sports Frenzy 2.0 taping on November the 23rd, 2022. This will hit Thanksgiving morning, the 24th on the Maestro. Solo this week. Holiday time. I don't get holiday pay. I don't get time off, but somehow the conquistador does. How does that work? Anyway, continuing with football, continuing with the NFL. We recapped everything over the past week in terms of scores and news and injuries. So now it's time to look ahead to week 12. Of course, that includes our 3 Turkey Day games. First up, the Bills at the Lions. And as you know, if you follow the NFL, the Bills are playing their second straight game in Detroit because their game with the Cleveland Browns was moved from Buffalo to Detroit last weekend because of projected massive heavy snowfall. So a very unique situation where the Bills play in Detroit again 2 weeks in a row. The Lions are an interesting team. I will say this. Dan Campbell has got them, at least offensively, on the right path. Jared Goff, good for him, looks better than Matt Stafford right now. Good running game, decent receivers, getting their first round wide receiver, their pick from Alabama, coming back soon. Dan Campbell probably here over the last few weeks has saved his job. He is probably not on the hot seat anymore. But that being said, after that awful, weird loss to the Vikings a couple weeks ago, where everybody thought Josh Allen might have done severe damage to his elbow, everything got straightened out. The ship has been righted. Bills look they're okay. Yes, now they're chasing the Chiefs in the AFC, but that being said, they should win this game. I think it'll be a fun game. I think it'll be a lot closer than the point spread would indicate. But that being said, we've got 7 of our 8 panelists with their picks in. Everybody is taking the Bills. Middle game on Thanksgiving is a huge NFC East clash between the Giants and the Cowboys, of course, being played at AT&T Stadium in Texas. After what the Cowboys did to the Vikings last week, everybody, no surprise, taking Dallas. Giants stumbled against the Lions, who we just talked about. I think the New York teams eventually are going to end up getting a harsh dose of reality. We're starting to see it more with the Jets now with the Zach Wilson situation. We'll talk more about that in a second, but I don't believe the Giants are as good as their record indicates. Even though I do like Brian Daboll as a head coach, I think he was the right choice. I don't know if Daniel Jones is the right guy at quarterback. Good to see Saquon Barkley back and healthy. They have no wide receivers. Defense is okay, but I think the Giants are going to start backsliding. Started last week with the Lions, and it's going to continue here with Dallas. The night game, the Patriots coming off that ugly win against the Jets, playing at Minnesota, coming off an ugly win against the Cowboys. Ugly loss. Sorry, the Cowboys got the big win. It was an ugly, ugly loss for the Vikings. Justin Jefferson, who up to last weekend was considered probably the best receiver in football, laid a big fat turd. And Kirk Cousins again proves to be the biggest choker as a quarterback possibly in football history. Cannot win outside of 1 o'clock games on Sunday. When the bright lights are shining on him, he chokes miserably. So what's he going to do? Prime time game against the genius Bill Belichick. Well, our 7 panelists who have got their votes in agree with me, except for Aaron. Aaron is the one lone dissenting voice out of all 3 of these Thanksgiving Day games. Aaron is taking the Patriots, the rest of us taking the Vikings. I think the Vikings bounce back. I'm not saying they're going to throw a beat down on the Patriots. That would be just ridiculous. But they've got so much more talent than the Patriots do. With the Patriots, you guys know it's the system. You got to buy into Belichick's system. You've got to believe in the system. But that also means that they don't go out and spend money on talent. They've got some good guys. Of course, Matthew Judon, fantastic defensive player. But do you really believe in Mac Jones more than Kirk Cousins? Do you believe in Ramondre Stevenson more than Dalvin Cook? Do you believe in Jacoby Myers more than Justin Jefferson? I don't. Vikings win. Sunday, the 27th of November. Buccaneers at the Browns. This one feels like a trap game to me. Although all 7 of the votes we've got in so far are all for Tampa Bay. As a Buccaneers fan, I'm very cautious about this team. I don't know what they're going to do for the rest of the season. Are they going to go on a run? Are they going to tread water in a bad division, just hoping to get into the playoffs and then try to turn things on? Browns, of course, waiting for Deshaun Watson coming here in a couple weeks. What does that mean for the confidence of Jacoby Brissett? They've got the great running back, Nick Chubb, arguably the best in the NFL. Amari Cooper seems to have found a place where he fits well here with Cleveland. Defense probably a little bit underachieving. Haven't heard a lot from Myles Garrett recently. I think the Buccaneers will win this game, but like I said, I am very nervous as a Bucs fan. I think this could come down to a field goal. Cautiously going with the Buccaneers. Bengals at Titans. This could be really the game of the week. This is going to be a really tough, well-fought game, I've got to believe. I mentioned the Bengals, I think, are on the come up. The Titans have got a formula. pound Derrick Henry, play conservative offense, control the clock, defense, play within yourself, don't let up the big plays. It worked against the Packers. Will it work against Joe Burrow and that high octane Bengals offense? I don't think so. I like the Bengals a lot, and I think they're going to make a run here, especially once they get Jamar Chase back. But the offense has been functioning very, very well without him because you have T. Higgins, you got Tyler Boyd, even now with Joe Mixon and concussion protocol, Samaj Perine, great backup, can take over for a week or two. Stop Derrick Henry is all you got to do. I'm telling you. I know it sounds too simple, too good to be true. Stop Derrick Henry. Some teams, most teams, haven't been able to. Dave and I are taking the Bengals along with Doug. Aaron, Nick, Bill, and Sam go with Tennessee. Bears at Jets. We mentioned the Zach Wilson quarterback controversy with the Jets. They've moved on to Mike White. Justin Fields for the Bears is dinged up, shoulder issues, possible muscle tendon damage. And we know, I've talked about it, the Bears defense is a sieve. If the Jets put together a basic game plan, we just talked about it with the Titans and what they do. If the Jets do that, just run the ball, Michael Carter, Robinson, run the ball, run the ball. With that defense, with that Jets defense, which has been really good this year, the Bears possibly with Trevor Siemian behind center, even if it is Justin Fields, limited, Bears will not be able to put up enough points to win this game. Jets for everybody but Doug. He's sticking with the Bears. Falcons at Commanders. Commanders are on a roll. We talked about it. Falcons beat the Bears last week. They're hanging in there. I just don't like the Falcons. I don't like the makeup of the team. They're a year or two away. They need some more draft picks. They need to get some good young players in here to develop for Atlanta. Marcus Mariota is not the long-term answer. Cordarrelle Patterson, yes, he had the big kick return against the Bears, but he's hit and miss in terms of an impact player. Some weeks he's phenomenal. Some weeks he's absent. Drake London's a nice young receiver. Kyle Pitts now out for the year. Commanders have a nice duo at running back. They have solid receivers, and now they're getting their stud defensive end back from Ohio State. They're going to bolster that defense for Jack Del Rio. Commanders for everybody but Nick and Doug. Nick and Doug go with Arthur Smith's Atlanta Falcons. Broncos at Panthers. What a stinker of a game, but the reason we're picking it is it's still a difficult game to pick. Broncos, of course, found a way to botch a home victory they had in their hands against the awful Las Vegas Raiders. When I heard that Nathaniel Hackett had given up play calling duties, I thought for sure that meant the Broncos would at least be good enough, revitalized enough to be able to win at home against the Raiders, and I was wrong. So now what does that mean for what what's to come for the rest of the year for this putrid Broncos squad. Of course, playing an equally brutal Carolina Panthers team. We talked about Sam Darnold is now the starting quarterback. Donta Foreman in the backfield. Hit and miss. Some days he looks fantastic. Other days he looks like a backup, which is what he was before they traded Christian McCaffrey. The Broncos' most significant move of the week, getting rid of Melvin Gordon because of his fumble problems. So now the journeyman, Latavius Murray, will take over in the backfield. Steady, solid Latavius Murray. I think that's going to be the difference. That and the fact that Donta Foreman's not going to be able to run that much on this stout Broncos defense. As bad as Russell Wilson has looked, in a close game on the road, I think the Broncos win. Aaron, Nick, Bill, and Sam agree with me, but Dave and Doug go with Carolina. Chargers at the Cardinals. It has been a rough week for the Cardinals. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on, but let's suffice it to say that this team is a mess, and they have given contract extensions to Cliff Kingsbury, to Kyler Murray. I don't think right now the front office is feeling very good about that. This team is not going to the playoffs this year. You're stuck with Kyler Murray. You're stuck with Cliff Kingsbury unless you want to eat money. In firing Kingsbury, trying to trade Kyler Murray. The Chargers, I've told you, I don't like Brandon Staley as a head coach. I think he's awful. This team is 5-5 right now. They should be better than this. Yes, they have had injuries at the wide receiver position. Keenan Allen has missed a majority of the season. But you've had Austin Eckler. You've had Justin Herbert. You've got Khalil Mack and Bosa and Derwin James on the defense. How is this team 5-5? They have got to go into Arizona and win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive. And I think they will. Everybody on the panel agrees except Doug. Doug is going with Arizona. Finally, Monday night, November the 28th, Steelers at the Colts. I'm all for Jeff Saturday. I am happy he got the chance to coach this team. I like the outside the box thinking. He's 1-1, barely lost to the team with the best record in the NFL, the Eagles, this past Sunday. Matt Ryan being back as a starting quarterback, that was the right call, but I think the bloom is off the rose. I think that loss to Philadelphia, you're going to start to see confidence erode. Nobody knows for sure if Jeff Saturday is going to be here with the Colts past this season. Whereas with the Steelers, you're finally starting to see Najee Harris run the ball well the last couple games. Kenny Pickett finally maybe starting to see the game slow down a little bit. I'm taking the Steelers. So is Aaron. Everybody else takes the Indianapolis Colts. And those are your Week 12 NFL picks. Now moving on to college football. Of course, this coming weekend is rivalry week. So that's really where you're going to see a lot of things shift and change, in my opinion. Last weekend, I don't know if we saw all that much. Now, of course, our picks were terrible again, but it's all the middle teams. It's all the teams in the middle of the pack that are beating up on each other, and we can't figure out who to go with in that respect from week to week. Now, TCU held on against Baylor, so TCU is still in the college football playoff picture right now, along with Michigan and Ohio State. Of course, that game coming up this weekend will decide for sure which of those two is a lock for the Final Four. Georgia, of course, sitting on top. Shouldn't have much trouble this weekend with Georgia Tech. It'll all come down to, can they get through the SEC championship? Now, Tennessee, bad news all around for the Volunteers. Of course, earlier this year, they were the darlings. Dynamic offense. Josh Heupel's team, until they got to Georgia, looked fantastic. Still hovering outside the top four, even after that loss to Georgia. But, number one, they lose their quarterback, Hendon Hooker, for the year with a torn ACL, and they get blasted by South Carolina. They are out of the playoff picture now. The teams hovering on the outside, USC with a big matchup this coming weekend against Notre Dame. Clemson has an outside shot. Probably take a miracle for them to get in. We'll see what happens, kids. Rumors are still rampant that Lane Kiffin is going to become a nomad yet again, move on from Ole Miss to Auburn. He's shooting down those rumors, but who knows? He might be just playing coy for a week, waiting until this Thursday's game against Mississippi State is over. Would it shock me if he moves on? No. At some point, he has got to stay somewhere. I would say this. If he goes to Auburn, he better plan on being there for a long time, because I don't see how anybody can trust him in the future. And I know it's not necessarily just him. There are other coaches that do this, but I would not trust Lane Kiffin to stay with my program. I don't want a guy in there for 3-4 years max and then moving on to greener pastures, barely greener pastures. I mean, to me, okay, Auburn, maybe a little bit bigger program than Mississippi. And I'm sure behind the scenes, a lot more money. But in terms of success, in terms of potential for achievement, if you stay in one place like Mississippi, you build the program up instead of jumping from port to port to port to port, leaving wreckage and ruin behind you. I mean, it's working for him. There's always interest. It always seems to be somebody that wants Lane Kiffin. I wouldn't. Of course, we mentioned one of our teams that we follow, Notre Dame, up to number 13 in the AP poll. At 8-3, they have had a great turnaround this season. Their home finale this past weekend in the snow destroyed Boston College 44-0. My Miami Hurricanes continue down a path of ruin, disappointment with Mario Cristobal this year. Of course, quarterback injury was devastating. And of course, they played Clemson. There was no hope in hell of them beating Clemson. They lose 40-10. Now they have to come out at home, last game of the season, beat Pittsburgh to get to 6-6 to become bowl eligible. And then, of course, last week we mentioned the devastating tragedy at the University of Virginia involving the football program. No shock that the rivalry game between Virginia and Virginia Tech was canceled. All right, so we're going to start our college football picks for week 13, rivalry week. There'll be some spillage into segment 3, so be prepared for a break at some point as I go through these picks. We mentioned Thursday, Turkey Day, November the 24th, Mississippi State at number 20, Mississippi. Of course, all rankings are AP, not CFP. 7 of our 8 panelists have their picks in. Everybody taking Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Who do you trust more, Lane Kiffin or Mike Leach? I'm taking the home team. That's about it. Friday the 25th, really good game. Number 19, Tulane at number 21, Cincinnati. I have liked the way Tulane has played this year. Cincinnati, I think, still in a lot of people's minds because of last year's team getting to the college football playoff. I like to think I can look beyond realizing Desmond Ritter's gone, realizing it's a different team. I'm taking Tulane. The Green Wave. So is Doug, but everybody else going with Cincinnati at home. Baylor at number 24, Texas. 2 teams that have completely and totally fucking frustrated me the entire year. These 2 teams, seems like every time I pick them, they screw me over. Every time I pick against them, they screw me over. Baylor almost beat TCU at home last weekend. So who do I trust? When I look at the point spread and I see a Texas giving up 7, I got to go with Texas. We pick straight up. But the point spreads will tell me which way I should lean. So at home, I will go with Sarkisian's Texas Longhorns. Everybody else does as well, except for Doug. Doug takes the Baylor Bears. Utah State at Boise State, another rivalry game. Thought this point spread might be a little bit smaller. Ended up right now, roughly 14, 2 touchdowns for Boise. Doug and Aaron are going to stick with Utah State. Reluctantly, I'll go with Boise State. So does Dave, Sam, and Bill, and Nick. That point spread is just too hard to ignore. But again, Utah State has been playing very well as of late. I'm shocked at a 2 touchdown point spread in this. If we were picking based on point spreads, I would probably go Utah State. I don't think Boise's going to beat them by 14 points. All right, as I mentioned, we're going to spill over into segment 3 with the rest of our college picks. We've got Red Foreman's Dumbasses coming up. Hang out for one more segment. Quick promo. Once again, I'll be right back. Feeling mildly fatigued? Need a day off, even if you just took one a few days ago? Make $30 million a year, but just don't want to work for it? You need to join the NBA Load Management Club right now. When they're not napping or texting, guest lecturers Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving will describe foolproof ways to earn tens of thousands of dollars by not doing anything. Sports Frenzy 2.0, available on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, is currently negotiating with LeBron James to bring his popular How to Make the Hall of Fame Without Really Trying webinar live and in person to the Load Management Club. Thanks again to Sports Frenzy 2.0 and all you apathetic fans out there for making us a success. All right, everybody, welcome back. Segment 3 here. Thanksgiving Eve, November the 23rd, 2022. The Maestro is solo this week. This will hit Thanksgiving morning, November the 24th. Time to finish up our college football picks, clean up miscellaneous sports news, and give you, of course, our weekly edition of the Red Foreman Dumbasses of the Week. We left off Friday, November the 25th. North Carolina State at number 18, North Carolina. Not real fond of the way either one of these teams is playing right now. But you're going to force me to pick at home. Mac Brown's team's got a little bit more of a dynamic offense. NC State just doesn't seem to have an identity right now. The Tar Heels for me and everybody else out of the 7 panelists picks that we have in right now. Then the last game we're picking on the 25th is the rivalry game down in the Sunshine State, Florida. The Gators at number 16, Florida State in Tallahassee. I'm very impressed with the way Florida State has turned things around this year. Good for them. Florida still struggling. Looked like at the beginning of the year, both teams got off to really good starts. Florida State, for the most part, has been able to sustain their positive start. Florida could not. That being said, the 7 picks I've got in, everybody's taking the Seminoles. Moving on to Saturday, the 26th of November, the big one. Number 3, Michigan at number 2, Ohio State. All 7 panelists going with the Buckeyes. Just hard to go against Ohio State at home. Michigan's going to have to play a perfect game, in my opinion, in order to make this an upset. I'll admit the offseason for the Wolverines, I had my doubts. Jim Harbaugh flirting with the Minnesota Vikings right around recruiting time. Signing day, I thought that was going to doom the Michigan Wolverines for this year. I was wrong. Kudos to Jim Harbaugh for being able to return his focus to the program. He has got something going now. But the only problem is the Buckeyes. He's got that roadblock each and every year that he's got to get past. And until he can prove to me consistently he can do it, myself and the other 7 panelists with their picks in, we don't believe in the Wolverines as much as we believe in the Buckeyes. South Carolina at number 7, Clemson. Now, last segment, I talked about how I was a little shocked by the 14-point spread between Boise State and Utah State. I feel the same way about this. Clemson favored when I put these picks together at 14.5. Clemson has not been the most reliable team this year. Notre Dame blew their doors off. I still don't like the offense. And South Carolina just obliterated Tennessee. Everybody's taking Clemson on the panel, but again, I will say the same thing that I said last segment. If we were picking based on point spreads, I don't think I would take Clemson. I would take South Carolina and take 14.5 points because I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I think this is going to be a much closer game. Louisville at Kentucky. Kentucky started out strong. Louisville has been gaining momentum as of late. I believe in the college football playoff rankings, Louisville just cracked the top 25. I don't trust Kentucky. I just don't. Now, the thing that I worry about is I would trust an SEC team more than an ACC team. But again, I like the fact that Louisville's got momentum. They seem to be finding their way this year, even though it's on the road. Probably going to hate myself for it. I'm taking Louisville. So is Dave. So is Bill. Sam, Nick, Doug, and Aaron of the picks that are in right now take Kentucky. The Oak and Bucket game. Every year we got to pick this one. Purdue at Indiana. Indiana's been showing some signs of life lately, but Purdue looks just like the more solid team, even though they're on the road, even though it's a rivalry game. Everybody's taking the Boilermakers. Another huge game this weekend. Number 13, Notre Dame, going out to the West Coast at number 5, USC. Now, you guys know I'm not a homer. I don't root for Notre Dame. I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan, even though I live in the Notre Dame area. That being said, I have been extremely impressed with how they have played over the last month and a half. USC worries me. I don't know if they've got enough defense. Didn't like the fact that they could barely get by UCLA. That being said, Bill and Nick are taking the USC Trojans. Myself, Dave, Sam, Doug, and Aaron all going with the Fighting Irish. If I'm going with the Irish, kids, I'm serious because I've told you, I don't like Notre Dame. I root against them every chance I get, but I'm also going to make the pick that I feel is going to be right. I think Notre Dame wins this game. Oklahoma at Texas Tech. Again, two unpredictable middle of the pack teams, this time in the Big 12. Shocking to me that Oklahoma is this unpredictable. That being said, Texas Tech at home, very, very tough to beat. I'm going with Texas Tech. So is Aaron, and so is Bill. Dave, Sam, Nick, and Doug go with the Sooners. Number 12, Washington at Washington State. All 7 picks that are in are taking Washington. This could be a really close game, though. This one makes me nervous. And finally, number 10, Oregon at number 22, Oregon State. Everybody's taking Oregon, going with the Ducks. Again, very, very nervous. These last 2 games, the Pac-12 on the West Coast, the higher-ranked teams are on the road. They've pretty much lost any shot at trying to get into the Final Four. USC is really the only chance the Pac-12 has. I could see Washington and or Oregon stumbling against Washington State and Oregon State. All right, that's going to do it for our college football picks of the week. Other sports news. First up, Major League Baseball, wrapping up our recap of the awards. Of course, MVPs had not been announced when Dave and I finished up last week. So, you know by now, Aaron Judge did win the American League MVP. Paul Goldschmidt won the National League MVP. Nothing going on right now in terms of free agency. This is what really sucks, as opposed to the basketball silly season, football free agency. They are signing right away. They are signing boom, 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 boom. Baseball, they wait and they wait and they wait. Aaron Judge, of course, is out there as a free agent, visiting with the Giants this week. But people aren't expecting anything to happen until December at the earliest. And we've seen it the last couple of years where it can get pushed right up until the start of spring training. And I find it just pathetic. I don't know if you want to blame the agents, the players, the teams. You want to scream collusion. I just think it all sucks. I don't know how you can run a team not knowing what your team's roster is going to look like a month or two ahead of time. I think it's a bad way to run a business. It's a bad way to run an organization like Major League Baseball. But again, it's Rob Manfred. So why would you expect anything resembling sanity and coherence? Comeback players of the year. No real shock here. Justin Verlander in the American League, Albert Pujols in the National League. Of course, Pujols retiring. Part of me wants him to come back and give it another go, try to get closer to moving up the ranks in the all-time home run tally. But if he sticks by his guns and retires, good for him. It's a good way for him to go out as the NL Comeback Player of the Year. Then finally, the Texas Rangers will host the 2024 MLB All-Star Game. For what that's worth, does anybody really care anymore about any All-Star Game? NASCAR news. Rumors are, based on what we heard from Fox within the last day or two, they're going to stick with their hybrid booth for their coverage of the first half of the 2023 NASCAR Cup season, which means you get Mike Joy and Clint Boyer and then a rotating group of third color analysts popping in and out. But now the rumor is that they want to keep it this way because, of course, ever since Jeff Gordon left after the 2021 season to take on a full-time role with Hendrick Motorsports, of course, 2022, Boyer, Joy, and guest color analysts was the norm, and they're going to do it again because people feel that they're anticipating that Kevin Harvick will retire after the 2023 season, and they will bring him into the Fox booth full-time in 2024. So Stay tuned on that one, kids. Helio Castroneves, of course, legendary IndyCar racer, will be back for the third season of SRX Racing on CBS this summer. But now it looks like he might actually have a ride for the Daytona 500 coming up here in February of 2023. When we get confirmation, we will let you know. Other racing news. All you F1 fans out there, I don't understand why you watch this crap, but whatever. Max Verstappen wins his 15th race of the year at Abu Dhabi, the season finale. Of course, he had locked up the season title weeks and weeks and weeks ago. Boring, boring, boring. F1 racing is boring. Moving on to the NBA. Of course, your Kyrie Irving update of the week. And look at this. Kyrie Irving actually figured out, after weeks and weeks of turmoil and the pain he caused to not only his team, his teammates, the Jewish community, he finally figured out this past week how to issue a heartfelt apology for the idiotic posting that he put out there that got everybody all pissed off roughly a month ago. What? He got tired of realizing he wasn't getting paid because he wasn't playing in games and he was suspended without pay? Is that what finally gave him a come to Jesus moment? Come to Yahweh moment? Whatever. So Kyrie Irving finally returned to the court as his suspension was lifted this past Sunday, November the 20th. But here's the fun part. Last night, as we taped November the 22nd, the Nets, thinking they had momentum back. They've got Durant. Kyrie's back. Ben Simmons actually playing somewhat well. They go into Philadelphia. Of course, Philly's booing Ben Simmons. The Sixers don't have Joel Embiid. They don't have James Harden, undermanned. And they still beat the Brooklyn Nets 115 to 106. You guys know I'm not an NBA fan, but the one fun thing about the NBA season this year, over the last couple years, is watching the miserable failures of the Brooklyn Nets and the Los Angeles Lakers. Beyond that, I don't care. I just want the Nets and the Lakers to fail miserably. Dave's not here, so we don't really have to do much with hockey. The Blackhawks are starting to fade already. Now they've dropped to 6-9-3. The New Jersey Devils are on a run, though. They have won 13 straight, but they still got to figure out a way to get by the unbelievable Boston Bruins in the East. You know we're not going to talk about that much when it comes to World Cup soccer, because we don't like soccer here on Sports Frenzy 2.0. They've tried for decades to feed it down our throats, to shove it down our throats. And they're doing it again with the World Cup. The only thing I'm going to bring up on this is supposedly this is like one of the greatest upsets of all time, where Saudi Arabia beat Argentina the other day, 18-1 odds. Whoop-de frickin' do. Wake me when it's over. Although I have to admit, this whole thing with the beer sales over in Qatar is just hysterical. Where at the last minute they screw over Budweiser, who'd committed unbelievable amounts of money, shipped ridiculous amounts of beer over there, and at the last minute, Qatar said, no, we're not going to allow beer sales. Now, I've not gotten confirmation on this, but I think Budweiser, in a massively cool PR stunt, took a picture of their warehouse full of beer, basically said the winner of the World Cup gets it all. If that's true, kudos to Anheuser-Busch. On the video game front, wrapping up our little tidbits, our nuggets, our miscellaneous sports bits. I tend to delve into sports video games on occasion. And EA has finally confirmed they are bringing back college football. EA Sports College Football game will debut in the summer of 2024. It'll be interesting to see how many actual players are in it. Of course, they will have to compensate them. We'll see how that all works out. But be nice to see a college football video game back out there again. I'm assuming PlayStation, Xbox, they'll both have it. Without Dave here, of course, I can't do this as well as him, and I'm a segment late. But you've obviously found us somewhere, but keep in mind you can find Sports Frenzy 2.0 on Spotify, Anchor, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon, Audible, and Stitcher. And don't forget to check out our Facebook page, where each and every week you can find our full slate of college and pro football picks. It's a good thing. No moments of silence this week in the sports world. So our pivot to idiocy and stupidity is not quite as harsh as it would be in normal weeks. We have three dumbasses of the week here in what many consider our best moment each and every week. The presentation of the Red Foreman dumbasses of the week. The Minnesota Vikings wanted to do something special, something nice, before enduring their beatdown that they got at home from the Dallas Cowboys last weekend. But they were trying to do a salute to service. People were sending in tweets along with pictures of people they knew, family members, spouses, friends, who were in the armed forces. But again, in this day and age, it never works out right because we never double check anything. We don't edit books anymore. We don't edit website content anymore. I'm talking about not censoring. I'm talking about making sure the facts are true, making sure the grammar's correct. So the Vikings went ahead and put on the big board in their stadium one of these tweets that they thought would be a great salute to service. Well, it turns out they got hosed. They ended up paying tribute on their video board to a porn star who goes by the name of Johnny Sins. But because they had a picture of him in fatigues and somebody had sent in a believable tweet talking about how this was somebody I know that was in the military who means so much to me, they went ahead and just put it up, not realizing it was an adult film star, not a member of the military. Way to go, Minnesota Vikings. Do your work, double check, fact check. That way you aren't a dumbass here on Sports Frenzy 2.0. Now, we mentioned the Buccaneers and the Browns are playing this weekend in Cleveland at First Energy Stadium. Turns out some moron, some dumbass, I don't understand what you get out of this. There's no money involved. You're not getting recognized on social media. Some idiot broke into First Energy Stadium here recently, got in a golf cart, started tearing around the field at the Browns Stadium, digging up trenches and divots. Now, the Browns say that the field will be okay for this Sunday's game with the Buccaneers, but the Browns, for once, the Browns aren't the dumbasses in this scenario. The dumbasses are the guys who decided to break in and run a golf cart around the stadium field. What purpose does this serve? Seriously. What are you sitting around in your mother's basement with your 2 or 3 loser friends laughing and saying, oh, wasn't that great when we broke into the Cleveland Stadium and ran a golf cart over the field and tore it all up? What does that do for you? What achievement, what goal in life does that get you? Are you going to put it on your gravestone when you're dead? Chances are you're such a freaking dumbass, you're not going to have a job and you're not going to be able to afford a headstone. So sit in your mom's basement with your 2 or 3 loser friends bragging about this move as you munch on Cool Ranch Doritos because you're a dumbass. Then finally, we mentioned earlier the Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals having a lot of troubles. Receivers yelling at quarterbacks yelling at head coaches. Well, it got worse. This past Monday night, they got destroyed by the San Francisco 49ers in Mexico City. And it turns out one of their assistant coaches, Sean Kugler, well, Sean Kugler decided to grope a woman inappropriately, without permission, losing his job in the process. The Cardinals fired Mr. Kugler for groping. Again, it boggles my mind. I know people want to have fun. I know people want to let loose, but in this day and age, when you've got to be ultra careful and ultra cautious about what you do, what you say, when you say it, how you say it, who you say things to, who you do things to. This stuff continues to happen, especially when you've got what many of us would consider a dream job and you put it on the line just to grab somebody's ass or grab a tit is unbelievable to me. Unbelievable to me. The stupidity of some of these men and women out there. Sean Kugler, you are a primo, top level, first class dumbass. That'll do it for Sports Frenzy 2.0. Have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the football. Check out the weekend edition this coming Saturday morning before all of the great Saturday Classic college rivalries. I'm the Maestro. I will check you out next week, hopefully with Dave. Take care, everybody.